Good evening and good afternoon. This is Nathaniel Kempson Productions here today, and welcome back to Cowerbridge Junction. I thought it was high time that I actually showed you guys this layout in proper detail. So let's take a look. Starting at the south end of the layout by Thomas's Tunnel, this area has seen a few different iterations and designs over the years, as you can see from these photos, but I did eventually settle on what you can see here. This was actually the first area I worked on in terms of scenery when I started working on the scenery, obviously. Made the mistake of starting it in the middle of winter, so the scenery and the glue and whatever else and the paint took a week to dry. I also had to go out making a wire fence out of matchsticks and cotton thread, and you know what? I think it looks okay. There's room for improvement, you know, for a redesign or something, and it is on the list of things to do. Moving around the curve towards the river, we come to my favourite bit of scenery, and that is the National Park area that you can't see yet. There it is. Took inspiration from Dartmoor for this part of the layout, and I'm particularly proud of the burial mound created by Mesolithic humans. This too actually was rebuilt a number of times using different methods, but in the end I settled on a solid lump of sculptor mould as the actual mound itself, and then carving and cutting and sanding the polystyrene sheet base of the scenery to create the ditch. It's probably a little bit overscale if you look too closely, so don't do that. It's fine. I chose to model the mound as an unexcavated site, so that's why there's no dip in the middle of it. So theoretically there is still human remains and offerings and grave goods and stuff inside it. Just thought it would be an interesting, you know, something to have. They haven't quite got round to digging it up yet. The river was an area that I was most, and still am actually, very nervous about. Never having done a resin pour before, and at the time of this video I still haven't. I wanted to really go to town with the detail on the riverbed, so if I got too nervous and did like a really thin, shallow river pour, you can still have interesting things to look at as rocks, sand, sticky, twiggy bits, and I even broke out the airbrush and went over it with some sludgy green kind of paint, and I was even paying attention to get it on the inside of the tunnel as well. I'm genuinely really excited about getting this part of the layout done and actually pouring the water, because I think it's going to help this layout really come to life. The engine shed, yard, terrain park area of the layout was something I wasn't necessarily sure I wanted to start with. But I was sold on the area after realising that I'd be able to use the shed area to swap engines over on the scenic section without having to manhandle them and put them on the shelves and stuff like that. I was actually able to do it on scene and do it somewhat prototypically. The siding next to the shed doesn't see much, if any, use anymore, since I abandoned the idea of using that siding to deliver locomotive coal. Because of the track work in the station, it wasn't really going to be viable. It's possible, but not really in a way that was realistic enough for me personally, so I abandoned that idea. The only purpose the siding serves now is holding old wagons and old locomotives and stuff, which at the moment includes this Class 4 Mogul, which was the first loco that I attempted to weather myself. It's a dead model, there's no motor in it, so if I fluffed it up, I'm not really losing anything. It's just an engine with nothing in it. And as it turns out, I think it looked pretty good. I think it turned out quite well, actually. I've been doing a lot of sort of tinkering and stuff with weathering recently. Mostly on locos. I've done 8 coaches in total. My Black 5, my 8F, the Ivet Tank, the M7, the Standard 3, the Taffy, and I think, oh, I guess you can include that one as well. Include the Ivet Class 4, and a handful of coaches and stuff. I do plan to make a more detailed video specifically about weathering the locos. But for the moment, to satisfy your need of how did he do that, I have a montage to show you. A montage showing how I weathered my 6-coach rake of coaches for my London train behind the Black 5. It's unnarrated, but there are subtitles that pop up on screen that tell you what I'm doing. Enjoy. So I hope that was easy enough to follow along with. We now bring our attention to the station, and this is where things get a little bit complicated. We have 3 platform roads here, 2 on the main circuits of track, and a 3rd which leads to the off-scene storage area, the Cassette Storage System. Trains arriving at platform 3 can either go straight through and carry on to the Cassette Storage System for sorting, or they can stop, run round, or if they're a DMU or a push-pull, just come straight back out the other way and use the junction point work to negotiate and travel in the opposite direction that they arrived in, basically an out and back type thing, which allows for some quite basic train movements but does break up the monotony of just trains endlessly chasing their tails, which is good fun to watch, but it can get a bit boring if you're doing an operating session. So it's good to break it up with a little bit of back and forth and out and back type movements. You do need to be careful that you've got the points and signals set right though, because it's easy to crash and or derail stuff. Don't ask how I know. You may notice that half of the station is missing. When designing the layout, I wanted the main focus to be on the river bridge and the junction point work itself rather than the station. So in order to fit both of those in, junction point work, and their river bridge, I needed to squish and condense and fiddle things around a bit. So I used a trope that the modelling community have been using for decades, which is chop the station in half and only have the front bit of it and have the back bit of it off scene. It's a very common thing to do, and it works. It also goes a reasonable distance of distracting your eye from the 3rd and 4th radius curves that are under that town section. Speaking of the town section, Percy's Bridge, and underneath Percy's Bridge is a hidden set of points. This allows trains running on the outermost mainline loop to leave the main line and gain access to the cassette storage system. They can then rejoin the main layout using the junction point work in the station area. It's a little bit kind of complicated to try and explain with just words, so instead I've made a little clip, a little video explanation, if you will, following 2 trains onto and off of the layout. So let's take a look and see how it works. Here I have chosen 2 trains from the cassette shelves. Prairie Tank number 4545 with a goods train and a Class 101 DMU. The Class 101 cassette is plugged into the track coming out from underneath the town scene. And the Prairie Tank is plugged into the goods loop. The point underneath Percy's Bridge is then set to allow the Class 101 to leave its cassette, indicated by a small red light on the wall. The north correcting junction is also switched, at the same time checking that the main line is set to the through road first. The Class 101 is now able to depart. Coming off the cassette, going under the town, and rounding the curved points. It negotiates the north correcting junction and transfers to the inner main line, now heading in the correct direction. The north correcting junction is switched back, as is the cassette point, allowing the Class 101 to run around the layout. Meanwhile, back at the station, the single slip is set to allow the prairie tank to leave with its short goods train. After completing several laps of the layout, the Class 101 cassette is plugged into the Platform 3 road, and the colour light signal in the station is set to red, stopping the prairie tank. This allows the point by the river bridge to be set, and the Class 101 can negotiate the junction point work and either stop in Platform 3 or carry on straight into the cassette, ready for storage. With the points reset and the signal set back to green, the prairie can continue through the station. The point underneath Percy's Bridge has been set to take the prairie tank back to the cassette storage system, where its cassette has been plugged into the correct track. So, I hope that explanation was easy enough to understand. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments section below this video, and I will do my damn best to explain more, basically. And finally, this brings us to the storage loops behind the layout. With the exception of the north correcting junction, the points under Percy's Bridge, and a few other bits and pieces, this area is about the only area that is exactly to the original track plan, exactly built as designed. Both main lines have a through road, which allows the trains to chase their tails in a circle around the layout, and both main lines also have two storage loops. Most of which can store more than one train, with the exception of the outer loop, which can only hold one train in each loop because they are quite long. When I first built the layout, I was hoping that that design of just two storage roads and a through road would be enough for the trains that I had at the time. But then eBay, and well, I ran out of room. So that's why I needed the cassette storage system. The track squeezed in between the main roads is a little bit of an afterthought, but also was kind of planned, but never actually drawn up in the track plan software. Essentially, it enables storage of, in this case, my M7 with its 2-car push-pull set, or at a push and a squeeze, you can fit a 3-car DMU in there as well. I wanted most of the layout, if not all of it, to be as hands-free as possible. So that basically involved the point work for this particular siding. And the area where the point is, there is a support beam right underneath the point. So I can't fit an under-mounted point motor. But because of the space between the running lines, there's no room for a surface mount point motor either. So I was kind of stuck. So in the end, I decided to take inspiration from the Launceston Steam Railway. Now, the end of their railway at new mills, they have a spring-loaded set of points. So the engines can uncouple from the train, run forwards, and then run backwards through the loop without actually needing to change the point at all. Woody Bay on the Linton branch will also use this down at Killington Lane. So essentially what I did was I ripped the over-centre spring out of a Pico right-hand curve point and superglued a spring thing from an old Bachmann model, the old split chassis ones. I think it was Patriot actually. Doesn't matter. I stole that out of it, and basically that allows the spring to keep the point set for the siding, whilst traffic travelling around the main line can just push it past and keep travelling in the same in their direction. But the point snaps back, and I'll interlay some video clips of that working here. Most of the time I don't get any derailments, but the odd occasion a wagon would wander off, or the front pony truck or front bogies of a locomotive would just fall off, disobeying the laws of physics entirely. So I did have to fit a re-railing section of track. The one I went for is the Hornby one. I don't know of any other ones available. Correct me if I'm wrong. But essentially, this re-rails any item of rolling stock or any wheels that happen to pop off the track. And as I say, for the most part, it works pretty well. There's still the odd loco that does seem to have an issue with it. So I'm careful to keep the point itself oiled as much as I can, so it moves over with less resistance, I suppose. And also the railer track, I try and keep that as clean as I can, brush the dust off, and little, very little spots of oil along the kind of the re-railing bit to make it a bit more slippery, to try and encourage the wheels to slide back into place. Tucked underneath the station board of this layout is the control center, which is an Arduino running DCC EX. It's a little bit complicated to fit into this video, so at some point I will make a dedicated power and control video talking about it in depth. But in layman's terms, the Cowerbridge PC talks to the Arduino with a program called JMRI. Once you get things set up correctly and you configure the code on the Arduino, you can drive trains straight from your computer or your laptop. But if you enable the Y throttle, you can also control the layout from your smartphone, which is what I do. Signals, points, the locomotives, any accessory decoders that you might have for lighting and stuff like that, all works absolutely fine. And you don't need a phone to do this. JMRI works on its own, giving you control over engines, points, and signals and lighting. Everything that's DCC operated can be driven with JMRI. But I prefer to use my phone because I can stand on the outside of the layout and still control everything over the back of the layout with absolutely no issues whatsoever. The coolest thing though is that I can drive the layout from anywhere in my apartment. If I wanted to sit on the toilet and drive a train, for whatever reason, I would be able to do that. I've not done that, by the way. The layout lighting took longer than you might expect for me to figure out. And by layout lighting, I mean these weird looking things here. Rather than layout lighting inside the buildings and lampposts and stuff, I'm on about layout lighting, like what would you call room lighting type thing. Originally, I had thought about creating a big wooden frame and using those sticky back LED strips and a power supply strung all the way along the layout, downfiring to light it up, which would have worked fine if I could be bothered to do that. So I'm lazy and I didn't do that. I like to use these things. They're okay, they're weird. They've got a flexible gooseneck, so you can, you know, angle them wherever you want. They're on a USB. They've got, I think, 3 different light, like brightness settings. They've got different light temperatures. So if you want to have like a bright sunny day or a nice dim romantic sunset type lighting, you can do basically anything you want with the lights. I've got them working off of a multiple like USB power brick thing that I bought from a charity shop for a tenner. They all run off that. Some of them I've had to extend with USB extensions. You may not have to do that. Just depends on the size of your layout, basically. They seem fine, and they get the job done, and you know, I can see stuff properly now, and it makes filming things a lot easier as well. So that is more or less the layout. I hope this video gave you some idea of how it operates and how easy it can be to operate a layout of this size and complexity by just one person. Although, you know, driving with more than one person is a lot easier, and dare I say it, less stressful. So why don't we end this video with a nice little running session showing the trains moving around the layout and using the junction point work as intended. And that leaves me to say thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. Go on, you can go now. Go on, go away. Go on, get out, go away.